Myst, Might, Mayhem. By Han Jung-Wioya. Chapter 382. Sudden Change. Part 1. In a training ground within the inner court of Heaven and Earth Society, Yip Wai-Sian, the second disciple of Sun Yun, the bright-blade king of the Five Kings and a high-ranking official of Heaven and Earth Society, wore an expression of disbelief. Huff. Huff. A man in his mid-30s with short facial hair was exhaling rough breaths. He was Wu Horeng, Yip Wai-Sian's senior brother, the Grand Chief of the Jiagual clan, and one of the Five Tigers, considered the top expert of the younger generation within Heaven and Earth Society. Drip. Blood dripped from Wu Horeng's right hand holding a saber. Impossible. Senior brother had lost. What seemed unthinkable had become reality. Excellent. A middle-aged man covered in scars opened his mouth. He was none other than Sun Yun, the bright blade king. Sun Yun also wore a quite surprised expression, and for good reason. The newly accepted youngest disciple had defeated his senior brother Wu Horeng, overturning expectations for the duel. That new disciple was none other than Ma Qiuqian. I've been putting in a lot of effort lately, but to this extent? Ma Qiuqian was the one he had brought in as a card to forcibly restrain that guy in place of Ma Jianyun from Corpse Blood Valley. Of course, he had chosen him because he possessed talent and spirit no less than that guy, and that choice had not been wrong. This guy was also a genius whose talent had not yet fully blossomed. He never imagined he would be able to defeat even Wu Horeng, whom he had designated as his successor, in just a few months. Interesting. It was truly a curious thing. To think that both of the guys from Yun Mok Sword Manor he had brought as hostages would end up defeating his disciples. If they weren't from the righteous faction, he would want to designate them as successors. It was regrettable, but he would have to be satisfied with taking them as disciples. Crunch crunch. Ma Qiuqian's right arm, which had swollen black, returned to its original state. Since he became able to somewhat control the great technique of reversed blood through his teachings, he had improved rapidly, and Sun Yun became curious about where his limits might be. Clench. As the master looked at Ma Qiuqian with a satisfied expression, Wu Horeng bit his lip hard. How had it come to this? He had been putting even more effort into cultivating his martial arts to get revenge on that guy. But he never thought he would end up losing even to that guy's younger brother. That expression on his master's face only appeared when he was truly pleased. Ah. This is the worst. It felt like the Mok family had taken everything from him. That guy's brother had taken his master's favor, and that guy had taken the heart of the woman he loved. Since he had said he would establish a hierarchy, young lady Wai So-yen had been keeping her distance and not meeting subordinates privately. She had relied on him before that guy appeared. Grind. Wu Horeng, who had been biting his lips so hard that blood flowed, finally cupped his hands in salute to his master, Bright Blade King Sun Yun, and left the training ground with large strides. Sun Yun watched him go with a faint sigh. Although he understood his defeated disciples' feelings, he had no comfort to offer in his teachings. For someone who would become his successor, he only hoped they would overcome it themselves. And a close rival will make you grow even more. Ta-ta-ta-tack. Yip Wai-Sian hurriedly ran to catch up with his senior brother Wu Horeng. Senior brother. Despite Yip Wai-Sian's call, Wu Horeng kept walking, but he had to stop when Yip Wai-Sian blocked his path. Wu Horeng opened his mouth with an unpleasant voice. What are you doing? Senior brother. No matter how I think about it, this isn't right. What do you mean? How could Master do this to you unless he's lost his mind? So this is what he wanted to say. Although Wu Horeng had lost to that guy today, Yip Wai-Sian had already lost to Ma Qiuqian before. He seemed to have been holding back his complaints out of pride since then. But now that even he had lost to that guy, was he using this as a pretext to voice his complaints? If that's what you want to talk about, step aside. Senior brother. A duel is just a duel. With those words, Wu Horeng tried to walk past Yip Wai-Sian. Then Yip Wai-Sian raised his voice. Are you some kind of saint to keep enduring every time, senior brother? What? We're about to lose everything we have to those damn mock bastards, and you're trying to endure it. This isn't patience, it's foolishness. Grab. No sooner had those words ended than Wu Horang grabbed his collar. Do you really want to die? Why are you trying to take out your anger on me? Isn't there someone else you should really be angry at? What? I mean those mock bastards. You're really being insufferable. It's not about being insufferable. If we don't deal with them, we senior and junior brothers will really lose everything. Do you intend to regret it when that time comes? At Yip Weixian's words, Wu Horang's pupils shook slightly. He had ignored it, thinking it was just the outburst of an immature junior brother, but he too was human. Of course, his discontent had reached its limit. How could he not have the urge to strike down the two mock brothers right now? But no. His pride wouldn't allow it. Overwhelming someone with skill is one thing, but using underhanded tactics or scheming is what lesser people do. And if he did that, would his master or young lady Wei Soyan, whom he serves as his lord, truly acknowledge him? They wouldn't. Rather, they would be deeply disappointed. That's why he needs to use this bitterness as nourishment to become stronger. He can only achieve what he wants by overwhelming the mock brothers with skill. Smack. Wu Horang let go of the collar he was holding and roughly pushed Yip Weixian away, saying, "Stop talking nonsense and put more effort into cultivating your martial arts." Senior brother. I can listen to your complaints all you want, but give up on thinking of doing anything beyond that. If you can't do it with your own strength, it's all meaningless. That's all the advice I can give you. How? I'm leaving. With those words, Wu Horang left without even pretending to listen. Yip Weixian glared at him with resentful eyes. He thought his senior brother would understand his feelings since they were in similar situations, but being pushed away like this made him incredibly resentful. Bang! Yip Weixian, angry, kicked the wall and then went somewhere. Someone was watching him from behind. It was Mok Yuqion. Hugh. Mok Yuqion shook his head. He had followed, thinking Yip Weixian might try something when he saw him following his senior brother. But fortunately, senior brother Wu Horang's pride was too strong to fall for his tricks. If he had joined hands with Yip Weixian, it would have become quite uncomfortable. I need to get stronger, I can't be hindered now. His goal wasn't these two senior and junior brothers. Although they were half-brothers, he had believed they shared the same blood, but his goal was to take revenge on Mok Jianan, who had stabbed him in the back, and to set justice right again. It won't be long. I'll take you down with my own hands. Ta-ta-ta-tack. Yip Weixian, who had been using his lightness skill to head somewhere for a while, stopped and surveyed his surroundings. Then he headed towards what looked like a warehouse building with few people around. Once inside, Yip Weixian clap clap, clap, clap clap, clapped his hands in a regular pattern. Then the dark warehouse lit up, and someone revealed themselves. That person was Brother Mo. It was Mo Yak, who could be called the right-hand man of Na Yelriang, the first disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society head. How was he waiting for Yip Weixian in such a secretive place? The reason was soon revealed. Mo Yak, holding a lantern, smiled and asked, "So, did you succeed in persuading Brother Wu?" At this question, Yip Weixian shook his head with a sigh. As if he had expected this response, Mo Yak shrugged his shoulders. From the start, he had predicted that Yip Weixian would fail. Having contacted Wu Horang several times before to persuade him to serve the first disciple Na Yelriang, he knew well how stubborn he was. He had somewhat guessed that someone with such strong pride would never join them. But with the variable of Mok Yuqion, he thought there might be a possibility, but even that didn't seem to be of much use. Well, it doesn't matter. Wu Horang was dispensable anyway. Brother Mo. If you give me a little more time. Pat pat. Mo Yak patted his shoulder as if comforting him and said, "It's all right. You can persuade Brother Wu slowly. More importantly, the first disciple has high expectations for you. Is that true? Of course it is. Mo Yak's mouth corners twitched upwards at Yip Waixian's face full of expectation. In truth, Wu Horeng was a troublesome piece due to his stubbornness. On the other hand, there was no better piece to use than someone overflowing with greed and jealousy. You could paint any picture you wanted with such a person. Late at night, someone was pouring alcohol on a tombstone. It was Ho Zhang Hyak, the Grand Chief of the Destruction Clan. He was the child of Ho Tae Gang, the axe-destroying king, one of the 5 kings and the true first peak of the 5 Peaks Society led by Jang Nung Ak, the second disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society head. Of course, this was the case a few months ago. What was inside that body now was not Ho Zhang Hyak himself, but Wai Mingqion, the second peak who had become a vengeful spirit. Wai Mingqion, who had taken over Ho Zhang Hyak's body, let out a long sigh. He always felt uneasy whenever he came here. This was because the name engraved on the tombstone was Wai Mingqion. To think I'd be looking at my own dead body's grave with these 2 eyes I've longed for all my life. Gulp gulp. Wai Mingqion drank from the bottle he had been pouring on the tombstone. His wish as a blind person had been to see. But who could have imagined he would end up seeing like this? Should I be satisfied with living like this, even though I've lost my body? He always felt complicated whenever he saw the tombstone. Even so, he had no choice. Having become Mok Jiangun's spirit servant and formed a connection, he had to follow his orders. As he was drinking the remaining alcohol, it happened. Clink! Wai Mingqion put down the bottle and tilted his head back. Swish! A sharp blade energy brushed past over his tilted head. It was saber energy. Wai Mingqion, who had avoided the saber energy, hurriedly used his movement technique to create distance behind him. His eyes flickered as he created distance. The one who had sent the saber energy towards him was none other than first disciple? It was first disciple Na Yelriang. Na Yelriang smiled and said, "No matter how much you miss your dead old comrade, it's dangerous to wander alone in times like these." Despite his smiling face, his words were utterly brutal. Wai Mingqion's gaze sharpened as he glared at Na Yelriang. As bold as ever. He had been inwardly worried about his recent movements to properly establish a succession structure, but he didn't expect him to target him so openly. At this, Wai Mingqion gripped the handle of the axe on his back and said, "If I die, you'll have to face the alliance of your 2 junior brothers head-on. Are you sufficiently prepared?" "Well, that's not for you to worry about." No sooner had those words ended than Na Yelriang's figure scattered like smoke. "Isn't this convincing enough?" Pat. First disciple Na Yelriang put his arm around someone's shoulder as he spoke. That someone was looking at the corpse of the dead Ho Zhang Hyak, Wai Mingqion, with bewildered eyes. It was none other than Yip Waixian, the second disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun. He really killed him. Yip Waixian was inwardly at a loss. Just this evening at the dinner, he had been in such a good mood. This was because first disciple Na Yelriang had said he would accept him into his ranks and even held a drinking party. But now, by his hand, a subordinate of the second disciple Jang Nung Ak had died. This alone was a huge matter, but the problem was that behind Ho Zhang Hyak was not only the second disciple but also his father, axe-destroying King Ho Tae Gang. To kill the child of one of the 8 stars. Axe-destroying King Ho Tae Gang. He was one of the 8 stars, who could be called the highest experts in the current martial arts world. He never thought he would kill the child of such a person so recklessly. What was even more bewildering was this why he asked me to show him my saber technique? Na Yelriang had killed Ho Zhang Hyak by imitating part of the saber technique he had shown. To anyone watching, it would look like it was done by someone from his sect. Yip Waixian now realized his true purpose. It's to break up the alliance between Master and the axe-destroying King, no, between disciple Jang Nung Ak and young lady Wai Soyun. Clench. Strength entered Yip Waixian's hand. He regretted it, thinking oh no, but it was already too late. What had happened couldn't be undone, and if he tried to reveal the truth now, his life would be as good as forfeit. Swish! While he was in this bewildered state, the vengeful spirit that had been possessing the dead Ho Jong-hyuk's body slipped out. This vengeful spirit was Wai Ming-cheon. Wai Ming-cheon, forced to come out due to the death of the physical body, clicked his tongue. This was because he understood first disciple Na Yelriang's purpose. He's made it look like the axe-destroying king's child died at the hands of the Bright Blade King's disciples, so the two kings will surely clash. If that happens, the power of the alliance will be dispersed. He had thought it strange that he was using saber techniques instead of sword techniques. Although he had thought Na Yelriang wasn't the type to sit back and watch, he truly was a formidable person. But even he had failed to predict one thing. It was his own possession. If he informed Go Chan, who was possessing second disciple Jang Nanyeke's body, he could reveal the truth. If that happened, first disciple Na Yelriang would have to face the anger of the two kings instead. All his carefully laid schemes will have been in vain. It was at that very moment. Swish! Huh? Something sliced through Wai Ming-cheon's body. Panicking, he turned his head, and there he saw first disciple Na Yelriang, who had removed the eye patch on his right eye. An eye with a golden hue and a pupil as small as a dot. It exuded the ferocity of a savage beast rather than a human, and that small focal point of the eye was directed at him. He can see me? He was perceiving him accurately. Chapter 383. Sudden Change. Part 2. The vengeful spirit Wai Ming-cheon couldn't hide his bewilderment as he faced the golden eyes staring directly at him. Then, young master Na Yelriang raised the corner of his mouth and said, "Well, this is interesting. So vengeful spirits actually exist. How?" He was definitely aware of Wai Ming-cheon's presence. Wai Ming-cheon didn't know what to do. He needed to escape this place, but he couldn't move since young master Na Yelriang had sliced his spiritual body in half. Though he didn't understand why this was happening, he had to flee quickly to alert others about Na Yelriang's schemes and his ability to see spiritual bodies. Just then, grab! Na Yelriang's hand seized Wai Ming-cheon's neck. Wai Ming-cheon's eyes widened in shock. Not only could Na Yelriang see him, but he could also grasp a spiritual body as if it were solid. How was this possible? As Wai Ming-cheon marveled at this, Na Yelriang raised the corner of his mouth and said, "But you know what? Why does the vengeful spirit that came out of Ho Jong-hyuk's body resemble Wai Ming-cheon?" At these words, Wai Ming-cheon immediately froze. Young master Na Yelriang's residence. Na Yelriang, who had returned after finishing his business, snorted and spoke to someone. "You come and go as if this were your own home now." At his words, someone emerged from the shadows beside a pillar in the courtyard. It was an envoy from the Elder Council, his face covered with a veil due to horrible burn scars. Even if it's the Elder Council, you should show some restraint. There's no place within the inner city that escapes Master's eyes. I've been as discreet as possible, young master. Na Yelriang shook his head at the envoy's words. While he had hoped for active support from the Elder Council, their overzealous involvement was proving to be quite troublesome in a different sense. If these retired members kept interfering, they were bound to draw attention. As long as he hadn't surpassed the society leader in martial arts, caution was necessary. Just then, the envoy from the Elder Council spoke with sudden interest. "By the way, young master, you seem to be holding something interesting in your hand." Na Yelriang raised an eyebrow at this comment. It was understandable, given that he was currently holding a vengeful spirit in his hand, its limbs severed and writhing in agony. "You can see this?" Na Yelriang's bewilderment was simple to understand. The envoy from the Elder Council was blind, having lost both eyes to burns. While heightened other senses could be attributed to losing sight, this was an entirely different matter. The envoy approached and said, "Have you already forgotten who brought you those eyes, young master? Are you saying I can see this because of these eyes?" "Of course. Those eyes are from a spirit beast level evil spirit, completely different in caliber from the eyes you had before. That's why you can even see vengeful spirits. That may explain me, but how can you see it? Are you just pretending to be blind? How could that be? I truly cannot see with my eyes. However, I have achieved spiritual enlightenment, so I can perceive such things. Na Yelriang snorted at these words. He really was an unpleasant fellow. Even though Na Yelriang's martial arts had been progressing rapidly since obtaining these demonic eyes after his seclusion, he still couldn't clearly see the limits of his power. Could this mere envoy from the Elder Council really be a match for him? As his doubts grew, he had tried to investigate the envoy's background several times, but each time the man vanished like a ghost, leaving no trail to follow. For now, think that you're playing me like a puppet in your hands. He wasn't someone to be trifled with so easily. It wasn't them using him, but the other way around. Once he achieved his goals and their usefulness diminished, he would show them the true meaning of being discarded like worn-out shoes. But not now. Yel Mayong, was it? Whether you've achieved spiritual enlightenment or not is none of my business. Get lost. Already dismissing me? A guest from the Primal Killing Pavilion will be arriving soon. Primal Killing Pavilion? My, what a coincidence. What? As it happens, I was waiting to inform you about something, and seeing that you're looking for the Primal Killing Pavilion, this is perfect timing. What do you mean? You won't need to wait for the guest from the Primal Killing Pavilion. Please follow me. The office of the Primal Killing Pavilion's main branch leader. As Na Yelriang entered with his hands behind his back, his eyes caught sight of something strange. There, in Cook, the leader of Primal Killing Pavilion, was visible, his skin pallid and his appearance grotesque. With black smoke emanating from his mouth, in Cook's face was contorted in agony, yearning for something, but his arms and legs were restrained, preventing him from moving. Na Yelriang asked Yel Mayong, the envoy from the Elder Council, what's wrong with him? Has he been poisoned? Why don't you look with those eyes of yours, young master? Look with my eyes? Puzzled, Na Yelriang lowered the eye patch covering his right eye. As he did so and gazed at Cook with his small, golden-focused pupil, Na Yelriang furrowed his brow. This was because he couldn't sense even a trace of life force from Cook. He was no different from a corpse. What is this? It's a living corpse spirit. What? Using the forbidden secret art of 6 people spirit summoning technique, Pavilion leader in Cook has become a living corpse spirit. A corpse spirit? Yes. Na Yelriang asked, unable to comprehend. I heard this man was a highly skilled diviner personally recruited by the society leader. How did he end up like this? This was the inner city of the Heaven and Earth Society. How could something like this happen in a place so thoroughly protected from outside threats? As Na Yelriang wondered, the envoy Yel Mayong answered. It seems another diviner was involved. Another diviner? Yes, normally someone a pavilion leader in Cook's caliber, being a high-level diviner, wouldn't be easily overcome. But if the opponent is even more powerful, the situation changes. Are you saying an even stronger diviner was involved? Yes. Have you found out who it was? We have a suspicion. Who might that be? The branch leader of Harmonious Immortal Pavilion. The branch leader of Harmonious Immortal Pavilion? Just as martial artists have a hierarchy of martial prowess, diviners have their own ranking system. Those who have reached the pinnacle are called divine-level diviners. The titles given to diviners are divided into conveying, profound, technique, moon, sun and divine. Among these, the highest is referred to as divine-level diviner. So this branch leader of Harmonious Immortal Pavilion is a divine-level diviner? Yes, quite renowned too. And quite troublesome due to their unique technique. Unique technique? Do you mean what was done to Pavilion leader in Cook? No, this is a forbidden technique with rather low utility that anyone could learn if they practiced. Though it's prohibited. Then what are you referring to? A technique that folds space. Folding space? Young Master Na Yelriang showed interest in this. Doesn't folding space mean being able to move freely to any location? In some ways, it was a convenient yet potentially very dangerous technique depending on how it's used. Yes, you can think of it as a type of space compression. It's a unique technique that only they can use, having mastered mystical arts close to immortal techniques. Only they can do it? Yes, I believe even within Harmonious Immortal Pavilion, only they are capable of it. At this response, Na Yelriang raised an eyebrow as he looked at Yelmayong and said, "For an envoy of the Elder Council, you seem to know quite a lot about occult arts. Including bringing me these eyes. He. I'm just interested in various odd things. Can this really be called mere interest? I'm simply trying to help with the great work you're going to accomplish, young master. Please don't be so wary." Na Yelriang snorted at these words. The more he learned about this man, the more his wariness increased. But one question arose. How can you be so certain that Harmonious Immortal Pavilion is behind this? To this question, Yelmayong bowed his head and answered, "Regrettably, I narrowly missed capturing the woman controlling pavilion leader in COOK. It was my oversight." Woman? Yes, quite an audacious wench. Though he couldn't see her appearance due to his lost eyesight, he remembered her voice and the scent from her body. He couldn't catch her because she escaped by opening space, but as far as he knew, even that technique had weaknesses. She probably couldn't have gone too far. Judging that she was still within the inner city, he had the surrounding areas blocked off. We'll catch her soon, so don't worry. But before that, I think we can teach that audacious wench a bit of a lesson. What do you mean? That vengeful spirit you captured, young master. May I borrow it for a moment? I haven't yet extracted the exact information about who's behind this from it. Na Yelriang had been planning to seek help from Primal Killing Pavilion, a group of diviners, because no matter how much he injured the spirit body, it kept its mouth shut. Vengeful spirits are different from humans. You can't extract information by simply inflicting pain on the spirit body. Are you saying there's another way? Yes. Through this method, we can even track down who's behind the vengeful spirit. Oh? Is that so? Will you entrust it to me? At this, Na Yelriang handed over the vengeful spirit of Wai Mengqion, whom he had been holding by the nape of the neck. Like Na Yelriang, Yelmayong could also directly grasp the vengeful spirit with his hand. Holding the vengeful spirit, Yelmayong immediately formed a simple hand seal with his left hand. TCHK. Lim. Bayong. Gi. Soon, a thick smoke began to seep out of Yelmayong's palm. Hiss 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 hiss. It was a strange occurrence, as there was no fire lit. As the smoke thickened, the corners of Yelmayong's mouth turned up in a sinister smile. When Na Yelriang looked puzzled. As I thought, it's definitely a spirit servant. Spirit servant? Yes. It's a type of technique where one forcibly creates a subordinate by forming a spiritual connection. However, it's quite unexpected. Unexpected? Yes. For someone of diviner level like the Harmonious Immortal Pavilion leader or their disciples, it should be quite easy to control a lower-level vengeful spirit as a spirit servant. But this seems uncharacteristic for someone who practices mystical arts, wouldn't you say? What are you talking about? Na Yelriang asked, clearly not understanding. Yelmayong shook his head and replied, never mind. In any case, they must pay the price for interfering. How do you mean? As I mentioned earlier, spirit servants have a spiritual connection. This connection is essentially a link between souls. Linking souls? Yes. Therefore, if we forcibly sever this connection, the spirit servant will be annihilated, and its master will receive a strong spiritual impact. Oh? Is that so? By adding a bit more to this process, we should be able to quickly locate where that audacious wench is. You sound quite confident. He. It's not particularly difficult. Na Yelriang's eyes narrowed at this response. He knew this man was extraordinary, but seeing his proficiency in such dark arts made him even more curious about his true identity. Just then, Yelmayong formed a hand seal with his left hand and stroked the vengeful spirit's head with his right. Then, suddenly, "What's this?" Na Yelriang's right eye saw something like a red thread. But the moment it touched Yelmayong's hand, crack! With a bright spark, the red thread was severed. Along with this, Yelmayong grasped the severed red thread and formed the immovable mind seal with both hands, beginning to chant something that sounded like an incantation. Heaven's essence, earth's essence, sun and moon's essence, heaven and earth's combined essence, sun and moon's combined light, spirit and ghost's combined form, 20 combined with my heart combined with this heart, heaven's heart, 10,000 hearts, 10,000 hearts, all combined with my heart, Supreme Elder Lord, urgent as the law commands. The method he was chanting was a type of summoning harmony method, which usually requires a talisman, but he was forming the technique using only the incantation. It was a level of skill that would astound other diviners if they saw it. However, crack 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 crack. Suddenly, Yelmayong, who had his hands clasped together, staggered backward. Then, pooh! He spat out a mouthful of black blood like a fountain. Seeing this, Na Yelriang frowned and asked, "What are you doing?" Wondering if this was also part of the technique. Grind. Yelmayong gritted his teeth and spoke with a somewhat angry voice. The technique was deflected. What? Crunch. Phew. Mok Jayanan lightly stretched his body and let out a long breath. He didn't know who it was, but someone had tried to track him while severing the spiritual connection. However, Mok Jayanan, who had reached the realm of life and death and gained extremely heightened sensitivity to all energies, had reversed and repelled the attempt. Along with that, he saw a terrifying face full of burned scars, and Na Yelriang. He could also see that man's face beside him. Mok Jayanan looked at his subordinates around him and spoke. "It seems it's time for us to return." Chapter 384. Sudden Change. Part 3. There was a seductive woman wearing provocative clothes that revealed her cleavage, massaging someone's legs. Her name was Ha Chai-rin. She was the heir to the Flying Killing sect and destined to inherit the title of Flying Killing Yama's guest, one of the 4 great assassins of the current era. Why was someone like her in this situation? Damn it all. Ha Chai-rin had cursed inwardly dozens, no, hundreds of times. If she had just chosen a different final target for her 100 days, 100 kills, she would have already ascended to become the sect leader. However, she had failed the 100 days, 100 kills. Moreover, her memories were incomplete ever since she visited the Yun Moksword Manor. She still couldn't understand why she was here in the Heaven and Earth Society. Can I escape from here? Honestly, there was no hope. Even though she was the heir destined to inherit the title of one of the 4 great assassins, this was the Heaven and Earth Society, one of the 3 major powers dividing the current martial arts world. And the person whose legs she was massaging was a disciple of the society leader who ruled this massive organization. Should I be satisfied just to have prolonged my life? For someone as hot-tempered and proud as her, this was an utterly unacceptable situation. If this damn bastard wasn't a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society's society leader, she would have attempted to escape by any means, whether through poisoning or assassination. However, ahem. Can't you massage properly? Why yes, sir. Ugh. Honestly, she was terrified. She had tried to escape and rebel several times, only to have her facial bones nearly caved in from the slaps she received from this man. After repeating this a few times, she became so scared that she would flinch reflexively just from him raising his hand. Seeing her become so docile, Go Chan, who had possessed the body of Jang Nung A.K., the second young master of the Heaven and Earth Society, snickered. It was truly a sight to behold. When he saw her again at the Yun Moksword Manor after his retirement, he thought everything had gone awry. But now, the tables had completely turned. The heir destined to inherit the title of one of the world's 4 great assassins was now reduced to massaging the legs of a retired assassin from the Flying Killing sect while constantly watching his mood. He. The fortunes of war are unpredictable indeed. The ways of the world were truly unpredictable. It had been worth enduring all sorts of hardships while possessing that wench's body, thanks to his master, Mok Jae-un. Just as he was feeling satisfied with controlling her, suddenly, woom. At that moment, the space rippled, and a door made of smoke opened. Someone hurriedly rushed in. It was a cute-looking girl with short hair, dressed as a diviner. Go-chan recognized her immediately. Yeo Surin? Yeo Surin. She was a diviner dispatched under the orders of her master, the harmonious immortal pavilion leader. She had formed a contract with Mok Jae-un and was controlling in Cook, the leader of Primal Killing Pavilion, who had become a living corpse spirit through the six-people spirit summoning technique, managing the Primal Killing Pavilion. Why had she suddenly appeared here using her technique? Are you hurt? Go-chan jumped up in surprise and asked. Judging by her pale face and the blood spreading on her shoulder and abdomen, she seemed to be injured. Then she urged. Step back. What? Along with this, Yeo Surin hurriedly rotated in a circle with her hand holding a protective charm. The door made of smoke quickly closed and disappeared. As it vanished completely, she exhaled roughly and slumped to the floor. Huh. No, what on earth happened for you to be in this state? We're in big trouble. Big trouble? What do you mean? They found out that the Primal Killing Pavilion leader has become a living corpse spirit. What? Is that true? More importantly, who discovered it? Wasn't it said that unless it was a diviner skilled enough to be called a high-level diviner or whatever, it wouldn't be discovered? As he wondered, Yeo Surin answered in a serious voice. I don't know. It was an incredible monster who could break my technique with just spiritual power in an instant. I'm not sure exactly, but you're saying they're formidable? It's not just formidable. Maybe. They might be a divine-level diviner or close to that level. How could such a diviner be here? Ugh. Go-chan quickly supported Yeo Surin as she was about to collapse. She asked him. Young Master Mok. Where is young Master Mok? Not back yet. Go-chan shook his head as he answered. He also didn't know exactly where Mok Jae-un was or when he would return. Chang Ryan had informed him of the purpose for suddenly leaving, but that was all. Is there no way to find the young master? How could we find someone who's gone all the way to Kaifeng? Of course, being a spirit servant with a spiritual connection, he could find Mok Jae-un if he really tried, but the distance was too great now to pinpoint an exact location. However, one thing was certain, the fact that he, as a spirit servant, was fine meant that Mok Jae-un was also unharmed. Oh no, this is terrible. Someone with that level of skill in the mystic arts will surely try to track us in reverse. At her concern, Go-chan asked. In reverse? Are you saying my master might be in danger? To Go-chan's question, Yeo Surin answered with a meaningful voice. If the opponent is truly a diviner who has reached the realm of divine-level diviner, not just young Master Mok, but all of us might be in danger. 2 weeks later. During this time, the interior of the Heaven and Earth Society was facing a period of rapid change. The biggest incident was the rumor that spread about the society leader, who had been bedridden for 3 days, being in such poor condition that he had even lost consciousness. Normally, if there were signs of such rumors spreading, the society leader's direct squad and intelligence unit would move swiftly to cut them off in advance. But this time was different. Too many people had witnessed doctors frequently entering and exiting the inner sanctum where the society leader resided. The society leader was someone who didn't even allow doctors in when he was bedridden. For doctors to be coming and going like this, the society leader's condition must have deteriorated to the worst. This rumor spread rapidly throughout the entire organization, causing the internal atmosphere to become increasingly unstable. Even those who had firmly maintained neutrality until now were beginning to move. In a situation where a successor had not been clearly determined, such internal movements might have been a natural progression. Amidst this situation, there was another incident that caused an uproar within the organization. both openly and secretly, similar to the society leader's illness. It was the fury of axe-destroying King Ho Tae-gang. This was because his son, Ho Jong-hyuk, the great commander of the indestructible unit and known as the Five Steel Axe Slayer, had been murdered. The child of axe-destroying king, one of the 5 kings who could be considered the highest-ranking officials of the organization and one of the 8 stars regarded as the supreme masters of the current martial world, had been killed. Naturally, the organization was thrown into chaos. But here, another problem arose. The prime suspect in this already major incident was none other than Wu Horang, the chief disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun. The cause of death left on Ho Jong-hyuk's body was traces of the Transcendent Realm swordsmanship. And those sword traces were none other than the Bright Sun swordsmanship, the unique skill of Bright Blade King Sun Yun. Upon confirming this, axe-destroying King Ho Tae-gang, without a moment's hesitation, pointed to Wu Horang, the disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun, as the culprit. It wasn't Bright Blade King himself. If it had been him, he would have cut down this child in 3 moves. Then, the only one who could have killed this child is that guy. He believed it was Wu Horang, one of the 5 tigers. It wasn't someone like Yip Wai-sian. His level of martial arts wasn't enough to kill Ho Tae-gang's son. Convinced that Wu Horang was the culprit, axe-destroying King Ho Tae-gang immediately went to find Bright Blade King Sun Yun to kill Wu Horang, which led to a fierce clash between the two. If Jang Nung-ak and Wai So-yun, the 2 disciples of the society leader, hadn't intervened, axe-destroying King Ho Tae-gang would have seen it through to the end. Please believe me. I am truly innocent. Of course, it also helped that Wu Horang, who had been accused as the culprit, came forward to explain himself. Ho Tae-gang, who had come mindlessly to kill him out of anger, regained his composure and also found his son Ho Jong-hyuk's death suspicious. Certainly, those sword traces were undoubtedly from the Bright Sun swordsmanship, but Wu Horang clearly had no motive or reason to kill him. It might have been understandable before the second son Jang Nung-ak and the youngest Wai So-yun formed an alliance, but not now. Moreover, this is clearly intentional. Leaving the sword traces itself was full of malicious intent. Since it happened within the organization, it should have been concealed so that the culprit's identity couldn't be known. Because of this, axe-destroying King Ho Tae-gang backed down peacefully. Or more precisely, as compensation, I'll take your right index finger. In the end, he cut off and took one of Wu Horang's fingers. Although Bright Blade King Sun Yun raged and tried to stop this, even he couldn't do anything when axe-destroying King Ho Tae-gang, one of the 8 stars, was determined. Or rather, since Wu Horang himself cut off his finger, the fight had no choice but to subside. However, this caused axe-destroying King Ho Tae-gang and Bright Blade King Sun Yun to completely turn their backs on each other, and the repercussions eventually led to the dissolution of the alliance between Jang Nung-ak and Wai So-yun. Giok Ryan, the first daughter of Gi Hae, the Sun Rock Valley master who could be considered Wai So-yun's close associate, spoke to her with a somewhat disappointed tone. Deception is fine, but lady, was it really necessary to cut off Wu? I mean, Great Commander Wu's right index finger? For a swordsman, the index finger is. We should be satisfied with this much, okay Ryan? But originally, at least an arm should have been cut off. But axe-destroying King held back his anger and compromised. He held back his anger? Yes. If it had gone according to the enemy's intentions, at least that much should have been done. That way, the one who orchestrated this situation would be fooled, right? Exactly. But axe-destroying King also didn't like falling for the enemy's ploy, and he felt it was excessive to cut off Commander Wu's arm when he wasn't the real culprit, so he ended it at this level. I see. Giok Ryan sighed. Though she understood, as someone who admired Wu Horang, it was just heartbreaking. They were acting out breaking the alliance and cutting off Brother Wu's finger to make the enemy reveal themselves. Do you think the culprit will move according to our intentions? I'm not sure. As I said earlier, unless we had shown Bright Blade King and Axe Destroying King fighting fiercely to the point where someone got hurt after cutting off at least an arm, I'm not confident that Elder Brother will be fooled by this much. The person they all considered to be the real culprit was young Master Na Yelriang's faction. He was the only one who would gain the greatest benefit from the fight between Axe Destroying King and Bright Blade King. That's why they had resolved it through dialogue, but they cut off Wu Horang's finger and officially broke the alliance for the sake of appearances. Young Master Na Yelriang will surely approach Axe Destroying King, right? Probably so. It was Axe Destroying King Ho Taegang who was in the position of having to be satisfied with just a finger despite losing his son and being unable to avenge him even in his anger. Naturally, Na Yelriang had to approach him. That would make it easier to draw him into his own faction. If the young master approached in this way, Axe Destroying King Ho Taegang planned to join his faction and implement a strategy of suffering a flesh wound. However, Master's worsening illness is a variable. After the sudden rumors of Master's critical condition spread, the young Master's active movements had ceased. For almost 3 days, at that. It was unlike the young Master. They had anticipated that someone as cunning as him might notice their scheme, but his silence was making them uneasy. If Master were to really pass away at a time like this, the situation would become uncontrollable. Huh. Wai So-yan let out a deep sigh. It was frustrating. What would he have done if he were here? If he were here at a time like this, it would have been reassuring and comforting no matter what happened, but now it was just bitter. Where on earth had he disappeared to? According to what she had heard from the Vice Society leader before, it seemed he was absent for a confidential mission, but it was taking too long. What kind of mission could he be on? She worried that he might have gone outside the organization and something might have happened to him. Jiang-un. Just as she was inwardly longing for mock Jiang-un, someone urgently knocked on the door. Thump thump. My lady. It was the voice of Yang Il, the small branch leader of the transient sword group. Hearing his urgent voice, Wai So-yan frowned with anxiety and said, "Come in." At this, Yang Il opened the door and entered, catching his breath after rushing here. However, for someone who had come in such a hurry, his expression wasn't that bad. As she was wondering about this, Yang Il said, "My lady. Mok Jiang. I mean, young Master Mok has appeared." She, who had been sitting elegantly holding a teacup, forgot her composure and unconsciously jumped to her feet.